welcome. Thank you for joining me here for this class today. Today we'll be focusing on the element water, the 5 elements of the Chinese medical system. Water is probably the most identifiable element when it comes to Taoism, which is the ancient Chinese philosophy that much of Chinese medicine and Tai Chi and Qigong is based on. In the seminal work of Taoism, of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, the water is used as the perfect symbol of the Tao. And the Tao meaning, translating as the way. But the way I like to think of it is the natural way, the way things are. Could also think of it as the great mystery. And so out of this mystery comes manifest yin and yang energies. And so today we'll look for that balance, and we'll try to embody the element water. Because water can teach us some really, really valuable things. But first, let's just come to a seat. You could also lie down if that's better for you. And as always, we want a nice solid base, whether you're lying down or seated, just feeling the ground beneath you and gravity pulling you. And so this would be like a very yin quality. So the lower half of our body, or if you're lying down, the bottom or the back of the body would be the yin side, this nice solid grounding foundation. But then the upper body or the front of the body would be more yang. So there's this lifting quality. Not aggressive, but just a floating quality. I have a teacher who calls the lower body mountain and the upper body sky. And so broad and open, floating like the sky out of a strong base. And you might let the eyes close. Perhaps even leaving a little bit of a crack as the light seeps in. And just a very natural, easy breath. First couple of rounds of breath, maybe just breathing a little bit deeper, just to prime the lungs, bring in a little extra oxygen, calm the nervous system. And then again, a nice, natural, easy breath. One of the habits that we have as humans living in this society is to live up in the head all the time. You can actually see people walking around with their head tilted forward. We're always in the mind, being pulled along by our thoughts and our emotions. Is it possible for us to live in a bit of a broader place, a more solid standard that is more about full embodiment? I think it is. And one of the suggestions is to see if you can relate, rather than from the head or out of the eyes, seeing if you can observe the world a bit lower, all the way down to the belly. So we can actually physically drop our energy all the way down, centered in the belly, just a few inches below the navel. This is called the lower dantian in Chinese medicine. And you might even put your hands there And as you draw in breath, allowing the breath to go all the way down. And so the lower dantian expands first. We have this lower dantian, we have the middle dantian, which is the heart center, and then the upper dantian, which is the third eye. But today we're mostly going to focus on the lower dantian. Sometimes this area of the body, this energy center, is called an ocean of chi, or the ocean of chi. And so you could imagine, visualize a vast, clear ocean. Our breath is natural as to not to disturb the ocean too much. We don't want a turbulent ocean. And then you might imagine now, just in the heart area, just a nice bright full moon. And that bright full moon reflects off the ocean. And so the ocean has this glimmering quality. And then we can imagine the upper dantian being like a clear sky, perhaps full of stars. And so we have the vast open space of the third eye, the sky, the bright light of the heart, and then the deep, vast, sparkling ocean in the lower dantian. And just be with this visualization for a few more moments. And in fact, we'll stay with this visualization even as we begin to take postures. But each energy center distinct, but working together. Create harmony and connection. A few more moments here, just a few more breaths, gentle, easeful breaths. Feeling that vast internal quality of space and light. And let's take a nice long inhale and a long exhale. And again, inhale. And exhale. And again, inhale. And exhale. Yeah, let's bring the hands to the knees and just start to circle in the low spine. As we pull the belly back when we go back. And as we come forward, we reach the heart forward. Sort of circling around this energy center, this dandian, or hara, it's sometimes called. Yeah. It's like 5 times in one direction, and then we'll switch directions. Reaching the heart forward, pulling back actively. So keeping our awareness drawing down into the low belly. Good, and then we'll go the other direction, just a little bit smaller in your circles. So this is nice, just churning that lower dandian, maybe churning up the ocean a little bit, creating some more vibrancy. Yeah. And then the other direction. Using the abdominals to create that churning quality. Yeah, and then we make even smaller circles, just right around center. And the other way. Yeah, and then let's just come forward and we'll start to just move through the spine. So all fours. And just start to move through the hips, the spine, cow and cat, maybe even kind of waving through the spine. Again, this nice fluid quality we want to try to create. So these, the water element corresponds with the kidney and the urinary bladder meridians, which also correspond really well with the spine, and so we'll be working with the spine a lot. The meridians run up the spine, up and down the spine. Urinary bladder goes down the back body, and the kidney goes up the lumbar. So we're working with back bends and forward folds and twists. And then you might tuck the toes and then come up into a downward facing dog and just pedal the heels a few times. And getting into the hamstrings, just creating a little bit of activation there. And then we're just going to walk the feet and the hands toward one another. Now, you can create some distance between the feet. And I want you to keep like a nice bend in the knees so we're not too locked up here. I can tend to cut things off. A little bend there. And we're just going to dangle. Just a passive forward fold. And just sort of flow like you're moving through water. Now, if this is uncomfortable for you, there's a couple of things you can do. If you have a block or a stack of books or something, you can use that to put the hands on. This just brings the ground up a bit and creates a little bit more support here. So if you're not used to getting into the spine in this way, this can be very helpful for safety, both psychological safety and physical safety. You can also bend the knees a lot and put the belly on the thighs and just use that as support. You could also put the elbows on the thighs and just lower the head. So for many people, there's going to be some interesting things happening in the low back. So we can provide some support there. But if you're okay just letting the head hang and the arms hang, maybe even grabbing opposite elbows, please do that. Ideally, we want the weight of the head to draw down and pull the spine long. And just kind of rock a little bit. And so you rock, working out the kinks there. You might nod your head yes and no, but just initiate the movement and then let the head go. So you feel the weight of the head pulling down. And then eventually you just come to a relative stillness. And so what we're trying to get is just a nice stretch along the entire back body. Yeah. This urinary bladder line, it goes all the way down the back body on either side of the spine and down the hamstrings. Corresponds really well with this posterior myofascial chain, or this linkage of muscle and fascia from the bottoms of the feet all the way to the top of the skull. It's a really interesting meridian, and I think it has the most acupuncture points of any meridian. And so we're attempting to get some pull along the whole line. Now, if you're supporting yourself, there's still going to be some pull. So don't be concerned with if you're getting it right or not. Just a general forward fold like this is going to help out a lot. And just breathe. Remembering the visualization here, though it might be rather difficult because we're upside down now. So it might be difficult, and if that's so, don't worry about it. Just coming back to the breath, and that place, the lower dantian here, sort of compressing that area, the physical area, which is nice. We're just here another minute, and so checking in with the body and noticing if there's any tension going on, any places that you have the opportunity to breathe into. One word that you might want to keep in mind during this entire sequence is this idea of fluidity. And so not rigidity. We want to keep things fluid. And so tension would correspond with rigidity. Water has this really beautiful quality of flowing around and moving through. So we want to try to create that in our body. We are mostly water, after all. And so it's a very natural, primordial quality in us. Now, from here, what we're going to do is just begin to sit between the heels. So coming into what I call Yogi Squat, or just squat. My heels are on the ground, but that's not necessary. You could keep the heels up if that's better for you. You could even put like a towel or a blanket or something underneath the feet just to give you some more stability. For some people, the heels will never come to the ground just because of the shapes of the bones, so don't worry about that. What we're mostly wanting here is a drawing down of the tailbone. So it doesn't really matter if your heels are on the ground or not. You might also get some pretty intense sensations in the inner legs. That's fine. Another thing you can do is put a block underneath the butt just for some extra support. That's what I used to do. And then just bring the palms together. We'll press the arms into the inner legs and then squeeze the legs into the arms, and bringing the thumbs toward the sternum. Now, the big movement here is to try to get a little lift in the chest. So this lift in the chest will create what we call traction in the spine. So the lower body, the lower spine, the tailbone is pulling down, and then we lift the chest just to create a little stretch, a little pull. It's more active, but that's okay. Yin can have a little yang quality to it. If you think of the yin-yang symbol, you have the dark side and you have the white side or the light side. But each side has a dot of the other, which signifies that nothing is ever completely yin and nothing is ever completely yang. There's always a degree of both. And that's really what the elements represent. These archetypal balance of the yin and yang energies. That's how I like to think of them. Okay, just another half minute here. See if you can keep the fluid quality in this and noticing the rigid quality that can come when things get a little bit more challenging. Good. Let's bring the hands forward and we'll come back up into the dangle once again. And so work into it. We held this for 3 minutes the first time. We'll do that again. And so you already have some idea of what's happening in the pose. You might start to feel, if you haven't already, some pull in the hamstrings, the glutes perhaps. Just creating that sense of fluidity. We spend all day compressing our spine, whether we're sitting or standing. In fact, sitting compresses the spine even more than standing. And so our spine actually shrinks. It doesn't actually shrink, but it squeezes the discs and the tissues get squeezed. So we actually go to bed a little bit shorter than when we woke up because we're compressing all day. And then we lie down at night, take the pressure off, we wake up, we've regained that height. So this is pulling the spine apart, just creating more space. It's allowing for more fluid exchange in the spine itself. The discs are kind of like sponges. You squeeze them, it pushes liquid out. You decompress them, it pulls liquid in. Yeah? So we want this moving tension, compression, fluid movement quality or in the spine itself, which creates for a more fluid structure. Yeah. The spine shouldn't be rigid, it should be moved, it should be supple. It's a really strong structure. And so we can move it. We want to move it. If we don't, that's when injury can potentially happen, if we stop moving the spine. If there are 2 poses that I would ever recommend that you do and only do every day, it's these 2. This passive forward fold and the squat. It's so good for you. Just check in again, noticing how the breath is moving, if there's any tension arising. Good. Now let's come back down to that squat. So the Yogi Squat once again. And I know this can be a challenging pose for many of us, but this is one of those poses that we can do every day. It's so, so, so healthy for us to do this every day. For the knees, for the low back, for the inner legs, for the hips, for the digestion. It's so good. And again, try to find the lifting quality of the chest. And I'll see a lot of people in class like compress the back of the neck just because they're kind of waiting around. See if you can open up the back of the neck. Tuck the chin slightly. Breathing softly, again, creating a broader space where the intensity of the sensation just diffuses a bit or dilutes. Good. Let's bring the hands forward and then just start to walk out. And we're just going to come all the way down to our belly and just make a little pillow with the hands. Lengthen out long on the belly and just rest. So we call the rebound. And what do you notice as you lie here? We're not looking for anything in particular, we're just observing the effect of the posture on the body. You might feel many different things, you might notice many different things. None of them are wrong. Everything arises for a reason. And that reason is just to be seen. And so whether it be physical sensation or mental movement or emotion or memory or a sound outside is there to be noticed. It's rejecting nothing. Physiologically, when we relax like this after a yin posture, those areas that we were focusing on become flooded with fluid and energy, blood and qi. And so you have sensations that correspond with that. And now from the ground, just begin to stretch a bit. Just reach long. Rock a little bit, side to side. You might bring your heels above your knees and windshield wipe. And then we're just going to walk the elbows in. Come into a Sphinx posture. And I always like to wiggle the hips side to side. What we're going for is some compression in the low back, so the low lumbar, which the kidney meridian travels through. Now, elbows don't have to be right underneath the shoulders. They can actually, you can walk them forward if that's too much compression on the low back. It doesn't have to be an extreme sensation. Create a little broadness in the chest, or the collarbones, just so we're not sinking and collapsing the heart and the lungs. And again, try not to compress the back of the neck. See if you can keep that open. And then just find a natural pattern of breath, but I want you to emphasize the exhale. So we follow the exhale all the way out. Completely letting go at the pause at the bottom of the exhale before allowing a nourishing inhale to come in. And so not only are we compressing the lumbar spine a bit, we're also compressing the kidneys some. Whenever we're doing a back bend, we're physically compressing the kidneys just a bit. The kidneys are very important in Chinese medicine. They are what houses what they call Jing, Jing, which is one of the three treasures. And Jing is what we could call primordial energy, or our hereditary energy that's stored in the kidneys. This is our energy that we're born with. And in Chinese medical theory, we have a limited amount. When that Jing is depleted all the way, then we cease to live anymore. And so the reason we do practice, the reason we get energy treatments, the reason we try to stay healthy and eat good food is to keep an efficient energetic system. So we're pulling energy from the environment, we're cultivating energy in the body so that we're not depleting that Jing. If we're not cultivating this energy in our own lives, we start to take from our stores of Jing. And Jing cannot be replaced except through, there's some esoteric Taoist practices that say that you can restore the Jing. But for our purposes here, and for people who don't have 24 hours a day to cultivate Jing, we just want to live a life where we're doing things that nourish the body-mind so that we don't deplete ourselves. We probably all know, maybe not personally, of people who you can tell are depleting themselves, whether they're addicts or people who abuse their bodies in some way. There's a depleted quality to their energy. We also know people who are vibrant, who cultivate energy, whether they know it or not, who treat their body well, who nourish themselves. And there's a different quality of energy of those people because they're living off what they cultivate rather than depleting what they were given at birth. And so that's the idea here. If you'd like to, from here, we're not at the end of the posture yet, but if you'd like a little bit more intense sensation, you could do a couple different things. You can lift the heels above the knees. I can show you that. That might just give you a little bit more intensity. You could also just keep the legs out and come up into seal pose, which would be straightening the arms like this. Something else you could do is take a block or some type of prop and just put the elbows up on it. It's not quite seal, it's not quite Sphinx. You can make up your own name. You may also have noticed that we're compressing the lower dantian. So energizing that sea, that ocean of chi. And maybe you feel the openness of the heart space and that bright full moon reflecting off the water. And a nice open sky of the mind. Good. Let's come down flat again, just like where we began. Feeling the rebound, the effect of the posture, energetically, physically, mentally. Good. Let's start to move again. Just stretch long, wiggle, feel around. And then we're going to press back to fours and just start to move there. Some people like to come back into a child's pose here, or just move between child's pose and tabletop. And just creating that fluidity of the spine. Yeah, the spinal cord floats in fluid. But then also, according to evolution, we came from the water. We evolved from the water. And so there's this natural quality of the spine that's fluid, that moves through the water. And so we still have that in us. That instinct is still there. That's what we want to create. Not a rigid thing. A moving, relevant, supple thing. And now next I'll give you a couple different options for the posture. We're going to come into another back bend. The first option is what we call saddle pose, or you might know it as Supta Virasana or Sleeping Hero. So, but the difference here is that we have a particular target area, which is the low back. And we're not really concerned with an exact particular shape of the body, which is the case for most of our yin poses. So you can keep the feet in and sit on the heels. Keep the knees together or wide if you'd like to. I personally like to keep the hips a little bit elevated when I'm going into a back bend. You could also sit between the heels, but I would recommend not coming all the way down to the ground just because it'll take away from the back bend. So you might put a block underneath the butt. Sit on the butt. And then from here, you can just start to come back in any amount, really. And again, I want to emphasize the back bend part rather than the thigh part. You'll still probably get that. It's great. But I'm going for low back bend. Now, if you don't like this due to sensitivity in the knees or just not liking it, another option would be to come down to the back with a block. And we'll come into what we call Pontoon Pose, or you might know it as boat posture. You'll walk the heels in and then take your block. We'll press into the feet, lift the hips up into bridge, and then bring the block right underneath the sacrum. So it can be a little bit tricky here. So not the tailbone and not the lumbar, right in between. It's that flat part of the back of the pelvis. A nice way to find it is you can find your hip points here and then just trace the hip points down the side body to the back body, and that should be right around the top of the sacrum. And then from here, you would just lengthen the legs out, lengthen the arms up, and then just let the legs and the arms go. My legs naturally just they fall out to the side, which is perfectly fine. What we're trying to get here is some compression on the low lumbar. So right where the lumbar meets the sacrum. It's called the sacral lumbar joint, where L5 meets S1. There's not a whole lot of movement there, but we want to move it anyway. This is a place where some back pain can originate. And in a large percentage of men over the age of 40, that L5-S1 is fused, which causes such problem, such a problem. Fusion just means the bones just grow together. It becomes one bone. So we want to keep the pressure there. And so where Sphinx is usually a little bit higher up in the lumbar, L4, L5 is full. But it's really the whole lumbar. This gets, whether you're in saddle or you're in the pontoon, it'll get down there a little bit lower. And just relax here. So now we're stretching open the front body. Again, keeping the awareness in that ocean of chi in the belly and compressing the kidneys a bit and the adrenals some. We don't want too much sensation. So we're not going for this really super extreme sensation all the time. Just a little bit's fine. But whatever's appropriate. As long as you're able to relax in mind and breath, then you're probably doing okay. But don't be afraid to change it up, to move, to shift. Nothing wrong with that. This idea of water symbolizes this grace of moving through life and responding appropriately. Water can be the most gentle substance in the universe and also the most destructive force. Water can be mist, but it can also carve out the Grand Canyon. It can be ice. It can be the humidity that you don't even see. And so it can transform, can move. If you watch a creek flowing by, you'll see the water just sort of moves without trying. It moves gracefully. It moves around the rocks. It moves around the obstructions. It fills up whatever vessel you put it in, changing shape. It's always adapting and never trying. In the Tao Te Ching, it says something like the Tao, or we could even say water here. Or nature, we could say nature. Nature never tries, yet everything is accomplished. There is no stress. There's just the way, the nature. And so much of what we are attempting to do is to align ourselves with this, the natural qualities of our existence. Moving along with life rather than resisting. And so these yin postures can be really nice because we can notice resistance really easily. That might even be a nice inquiry question for you. How am I resisting? Some of those layers are very, 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 very deep. And it takes lots of practice to start to unpeel those layers. So is there any more room to relax here? If this is too intense, always feel free to come out. There's no shame. It's all just about what you need. And what I need is different from than what you need. Half minute. Rest. In the midst of the challenge. Breathing softly. Despite the circumstances. Begin to come out very gently, very slowly. Don't want to rush these transitions. If you're in the pontoon, you just walk the feet in, lift the hips up, remove the block, and then just bring the hips back down. You might lengthen out or just keep the feet flat. If you're in saddle, just come up. Sometimes lying flat on the back is a little bit too much. And so I usually just come to a seat, like a meditation seat. And feel, again, the response of the body and the mind to the posture. This approach to Yin Yoga, where we're observing internally, where we're keeping our attention within, where we're exploring our body and what's appropriate. It's a naturally introspective practice. And introspection is one of the qualities of the water element. This philosophical approach, an inquiry-based approach. Good. Just begin to move around. If you're on your back, you just start to stretch. If you're seated, you might just twist a bit, reach. Again, allow it to be intuitive. Again, we're tuning in to what the body needs, not what the mind wants, but what the body needs. And so the thinking mind can just go to the side. It runs enough of our lives. Now we're tuning into the body. If you're on your back, you might bring your knees in and just roll up and down the spine. It's just nice to massage again, the urinary bladder, meridian, and the kidneys and low back. Then we'll come up, and then we'll just bring the legs wide. Now, if you don't like to bring the legs wide, you could let's bring the left foot in. Again, you can also keep the legs wide. We're going to do a couple of different postures here. So we'll be here for a little bit of time. So if you know your inner leg muscles and tissues are extra sensitive and your hamstrings, then you might do one side at a time. And what we're going to do here is just turn out over the right leg. We're just going to fold out. Again, here we're sort of getting the whole back body again, but we're emphasizing this left side of the body and then the hamstrings as well. If the hamstrings are super tight or uncomfortable, just keep a little bend here. Sometimes I'll even bring an arm underneath the leg, or you could use a block or a towel, whatever you have. And I want you to explore a bit. Again, you might feel out and then come back up and then maybe move a little bit more inside and then maybe move a little bit outside. And just feel what works best, where you get the broadest sensation, again, along the back body. And then we'll just find some passivity over to one side. And just here 2 minutes or so. Some people like to bring a block down or a prop. Again, it's up to you. In Yin Yoga, we do want a pull. We don't want it to be too much like restorative yoga, where we're not, there's zero challenge. We want there to be a little bit of a challenge, just a little bit of a pull. Even sometimes some discomfort is okay. As long as we can keep a steady breath, a gentle breath rather, and a quiet mind, or a mind that's not obsessed with the sensation that we're experiencing, then we're doing okay. If the mind is just obsessed with that sensation and our breath is tight, and that's an indication to back out. But so it's this, Bernie Clark calls this like the Goldilocks sensation. Not too much, not too little, just right. We want the pull. This is what's unique about Yin Yoga. Breath is very gentle, and just what I really like about forward folds, one of the many things, is how noticeable the breath is. You just feel the slow pulsation. Something that's really interesting about the yin postures physiologically is that as we hold them, our tissues are actually becoming more fluid. Sometimes that water that we're made up of gets pretty thick and gel-like. We're mostly water, but it's in various consistencies throughout the body. And when we hold a posture and we pull, we actually create a more liquid environment, which is pretty cool. And again, fluidity is always good. You can always move and feel and test things out. We don't want to go to the point of fidgeting, because that's avoiding the posture, but there's this curiosity that can start to encourage a little movement as we explore and feel and get to know. Even when we're still, there's a lightness, a gentle, floating quality. And then we'll just begin to come up and just sit upright for a moment. And then we'll just do the other side. Maybe you're already wide like this. You can stay that way, or switch sides and then move, turn the body, and then fold. You can go into the same process as we did on that side. So we don't take that position that we had on the right side and just transfer it to the left. We want to approach this as if it's a new pose. So every time we enter a pose or a side of a pose, beginner's mind, as if we've never done it before. We want to feel into it brand new. Now it's the right side of the back, compressing the left side of it. We're getting into the back of the leg. Broad sensation, not too much, not too little, just right. And that might take a little bit of exploring to find, and we find it, and then we become still. Not rigid, but still. One of the main emotion that's associated with the water element and the kidney specifically is fear. Now, fear isn't always bad. Fear in the appropriate amount can be very wise. A certain degree of fear of heights is really good. There's certain things we should have fear because that helps us to pay closer attention or to avoid things that could be very dangerous to us or others. But too much fear limits us. And we can apply our fear to various things that just aren't appropriate. And for an inquiry-based practice, sometimes that fear can prevent us from looking inward because we don't like or we don't want to see what's there. And so we can become withdrawn or detached. And so can we notice fear? Can we embrace our fear even? See it for what it is. Because sometimes the fear is sort of off in the periphery, and where we don't want to look at it, and we're hyping it up more than it is, and we bring it to the center, and it's not even that big of a deal. But the lack of looking strengthens that fear. And so one of the things about inquiry-based practice is we try to create space and look directly at these things. Let's come up very slowly. Again, sitting upright, just for a few seconds, a few breaths. Good. And now let's bring both legs wide. And then we're just going to fold down center. Again, if this is uncomfortable or your hamstrings are super tight, you can create a little lift in the knees or put some blocks or towels underneath the knees. Something else you can do is bring the soles of the feet together. And you might bring the heels in a little bit tighter. You might not have to, because what we're trying to get is a stretch on or a pull on the inner legs. And so bringing in the heels until you feel a pull into the groin or just the inner legs. And then you would just fold forward if you'd like to, or just a little bit until you get that sensation. So becoming more familiar with our entire experience is something that we're attempting to do. So we become more familiar with our body, our physical body, so that we can serve the body better. We become more familiar with our mind and our emotions, our fears, our struggles, so that we can better navigate this life, so we can see what's coming, so we're not always surprised by things that come up. And so when we become still, we become quiet, whatever needs to arise, arises. And so this courageous contemplation, this courageous inquiry, and a courageous curiosity are so valuable in creating the life that we want. And so another word for this is wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge applied through experience. Or wisdom applied out of experience. The only way we can become experienced is through doing. By facing the fear and experiencing. Water doesn't fear, it moves forward. It becomes what it needs to be. Stay with your breath, stay with your body, perhaps the visual, the vast ocean of energy in the low belly, the full moon, bright moon of the heart. the vast open sky of the mind. Good. You can begin to come up now, very slowly, very gently. Yeah, and just grab the inner knees, pull them in, and come to a seat for a moment. Continue with the lower dantian. Just move a bit, lift your chest, twist a little. And then we're going to do one last pose. We're going to do a twist just for a few minutes. And if you have a prop, like a nice cushion, that's great, some pillows or something. You're just going to set your pillow or your prop here along the length of your mat. And we're going to come away from the prop, maybe 6 inches or 10 inches or so. And then lean back on the hands. And we're just going to drop the knees to one side and then keep twisting around. And then place the prop underneath the chest. Yeah. Adjust and feel around a bit until you find an appropriate twist for you. And just rest into it. The breath very gentle, just here for about 2 minutes or so. Emphasizing exhale, the release. And in the twist, it can be very nice at the very bottom of the exhale to just pause for a moment. In a gentle way, not in a forceful way. We just come out of the exhale to the bottom of the exhale. See what it's like to be released like that, very gentle. And the inhale just comes, just floats and opens, nourishes, and then we let go. Yeah. Good. Let's come up out of this very slowly. And you might just drop the knees from side to side a few times just to create a little movement. And then we'll do the other side. So dropping the knees to the right, spin around, and come down. This is my one of my absolute favorite twists. Because it's so supported, but it's also can be challenging. Some depth there. Again, following the exhale all the way to the bottom. And then the inhale is natural, soft, nourishing. And then the exhale lets go. Begin to come out of this very slowly. And we'll just come back up to a seat. Feeling the effect of the posture and this meditation seat. The effect of the entire practice. Settle in and drawing the attention down into the belly, even bringing the hands to the belly. Grounded into our source, this vast ocean of energy, the full moon, bright heart, and the vast sky, which contains all of it. May we be like water, flowing freely through life, and changing form when necessary. I want to thank each of you deeply for your practice, for taking the time to practice with me. And may all sentient beings enjoy happiness, peace, joy, and safety, and be free from suffering and the causes and conditions of suffering. Hope to see you again.